My name is Jasmine, and I am 49 years old. 10 years ago, I believed I was the happiest woman in the world. I met my husband Richard on a bus, in the most unexpected and ordinary moment. People always say that good girls should not talk to strangers, but we talked anyway. We laughed. We shared stories. Somehow it felt as if we had known each other forever. 1 year later, we were married, and I thought our love story would last for the rest of our lives. Richard was never the romantic type who brought flowers every day or surprised me with breakfast in bed. In fact, the one time he tried to bring me coffee in bed, he spilled it on my dress. We laughed about it, and I asked him never to try again. But he cared for me in his own simple, quiet way. He worked hard, he respected me, and he always tried to be a good father to our 2 sons. Our home felt safe, warm, and predictable, the kind of life many people dream about. For years, I believed everything was stable and unshakable. But lately, something inside me has changed. I feel a heaviness in my chest, a worry I cannot explain. Richard has been acting differently, staying out late, working weekends, giving reasons that do not sound like the truth. I try to ignore it, but deep inside, I know that something is not right. My heart tells me that the peace I once knew may be slipping away. Before everything changed, my life followed a gentle and familiar rhythm. I spent my days keeping the house in order, cooking meals, and taking care of the garden Richard always wanted me to look after. I planted flowers, trimmed the bushes, and grew vegetables with my own hands. The garden made me feel useful and peaceful, almost like a small world I could control when everything else felt uncertain. My granddaughter Claire often visited, and her laughter filled every corner of the house. She brought a kind of joy that reminded me what a full home used to feel like. My sons came by when they could, and for a few hours the house felt alive again, with conversations flowing and warm memories returning. I also thought about the man Richard used to be. He used to encourage me when I doubted myself. He used to listen, even if he didn't always understand. He used to show his love quietly, through small actions only I could see. Those memories held me together. But as the years passed and our sons moved out, the house grew quieter. I found myself spending more time alone, waiting for footsteps, for voices, for something familiar. Richard worked more often and stayed out later. He spoke less, explained less, and shrugged off my worries with simple answers that did not feel true. I kept telling myself everything was fine, that work was just stressful, that marriages go through phases. But deep inside me, a whisper began to grow. Something is wrong. Something is changing. And I am standing here alone, pretending not to feel it. The turning point came on a quiet afternoon, when Richard told our older son that he might stay at his father's house, instead of coming home for the weekend. He said it casually, as if it meant nothing, but the moment the words left his mouth, something froze inside me. My heart tightened in a way I couldn't explain. I had lived beside this man for so many years that I could sense when something wasn't right. And this felt completely wrong. The next morning, I drove to his office without telling him. I told myself I only wanted to surprise him, but the truth was I needed answers. When I arrived, I didn't see his car anywhere. The security guard looked confused when I asked for Richard. He said, "He is not here." Then he hesitated, his eyes shifting to the side. Before I could ask more, the guard's wife whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "Poor woman. Everyone knows but she doesn't." My hands turned cold. I felt the world tilt under my feet. I didn't ask what she meant. I think my heart already knew. I called Richard right away. My voice trembled as I said, "We need to talk." He came home a few hours later, looking tired, distant, almost afraid to meet my eyes. I didn't waste time pretending everything was fine. I asked the question directly. "Richard, do you have another woman?" He didn't lie. He didn't soften it. He simply said, "Yes." One word. A knife to the chest. My entire world cracked open around me. 20 years of memories rushed through my mind. Our bus ride, our wedding, our children, our quiet mornings, the garden I planted because he asked me to. All of it shattered in an instant. I stood up because sitting felt impossible. The room blurred. I asked him, "Will you leave, or should I leave?" He said quietly, "I will leave." I watched him pack his bags. I didn't scream or beg. Tears fell silently down my face, but I didn't wipe them. He hugged our sons, kissed their foreheads, and told them he was sorry. They cried and asked him not to go, but he didn't stay. He opened the door and walked out of our home, out of our family, out of the life we built. When the door closed, the silence hit me like a wave. I felt something inside me collapse. I broke down completely, crying until my whole body ached. Nights became my enemy. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't smile. I felt abandoned, betrayed, and deeply unworthy. But the conflict didn't end there. Months passed, and whispers began to spread. People said his new wife wasn't kind to him. They said the child he thought was his, wasn't. His new life wasn't perfect, not even close. 10 years later, he returned to my door, older, tired, carrying the weight of his choices. He looked at me and asked softly, "Jasmine, can I stay?" And suddenly the conflict wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. Should I reopen the wounds or protect what is left of my heart? Should I forgive, or should I finally choose myself? That was the question that changed everything. When Richard returned, my entire world fell into confusion. I thought I had buried my feelings for him years ago, but seeing him standing in my doorway, older, thinner, and carrying a sadness I had never seen in him before, pulled emotions out of me that I didn't know still existed. I felt anger, of course. How could I not? He broke me, abandoned me, replaced me. But beneath the anger was something even harder to face, a small spark of the love I once had. And the worst part was the guilt I felt for even noticing that spark. My sons were furious. They told me I didn't have to let him stay, that they would take care of me. Dorothy told me I owed him nothing, not forgiveness, not comfort, not even a conversation. But the truth is, my heart was not that simple. Even after everything, I still felt responsible for him in some strange way, as if 20 years of marriage couldn't be erased by 10 years of silence. Richard stayed in the guest room. He didn't push. He didn't ask for anything. He simply existed quietly in the house we once shared. I watched him from the window early in the morning as he fixed the fence with shaky hands. I saw him in the garden pulling weeds, moving slowly, as if age and regret had settled into his bones. He apologized whenever he had the chance, never with excuses, only with a soft, tired voice. "I'm sorry, Jasmine. I know I hurt you." Sometimes I felt anger rise inside me so strong I had to leave the room. Other times I felt something else, pity, or maybe sorrow for the man he had become. I remembered the years he loved me in his quiet, imperfect way. I remembered the day he spilled coffee on my dress because he wanted to surprise me. I remembered him teaching our sons to respect me. But I also remembered the night he left, the way my heart broke, the way I cried until I couldn't breathe. The emotional climax came on a sunny afternoon when Claire came to visit. She saw her grandfather in the garden and ran to him with the brightest smile. Richard's face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. She hugged him tightly, calling him Grandpa over and over, and he held her as if she were the only thing keeping him alive. I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. Not healing. But something real. Something complicated. Later that day, Richard stood in front of me with quiet eyes. He said, "I know I broke you. I know I left you alone. But I want to fix what I destroyed. I will wait. As long as it takes." That night, I cried again, not from sadness, but from confusion. I lay in bed whispering to myself, do I still love him? Or do I love who he used to be? I didn't have the answer. And that uncertainty became the most painful truth of all. One morning, after days of watching Richard move quietly around the house like a shadow of the man he once was, I finally gathered the courage I had been avoiding. I called him to the table. My voice was calm, steadier than I expected, but my hands were trembling on my lap. When he sat down, he looked nervous, as if he feared every word that might come from me. I took a deep breath and said, "I don't know if I can forgive you. But I want to try." Those words felt heavy, but they were honest. They came from the part of me that still believed two people could heal, not because they forgot the past, but because they were willing to face it. Richard lowered his head and began to cry. Not the small, polite tears people shed out of guilt, but deep and painful ones that came from regret. I had not seen him cry like that in 20 years. He told me he would do anything to prove he had changed, that he would spend the rest of his life making things right if I allowed him. We did not magically become a couple again. There were no dramatic embraces or sudden declarations of love. What followed was something slower, quieter, and real. We started talking again, not about big things, but about simple everyday moments. We listened instead of interrupting. We sat together sometimes without saying a word, just accepting each other's presence. Trust did not return in a rush, it arrived carefully, one small moment at a time. I know forgiveness will take time. I am not rushing myself. For once in my life, I am choosing what feels right for me, not what others expect. Maybe one day our family will feel whole again. Maybe things will never be the same. But I finally feel like I am in control of my life, and that is a beginning I can live with. Now that I look back on everything, I finally understand something important. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is a choice, and it is mine to make. No one can push me toward it or pull me away from it. I decide when my heart is ready, and I decide how much I can give. I also realize that the person who broke me years ago is not the same man who stands in front of me now. Time has changed him. Pain has changed him. Life has changed him. And it has changed me too. I am not the frightened woman who cried alone at the kitchen table. I am stronger now. I know my worth. I know my limits. Healing is not simple. It requires courage to face the past, honesty to admit the truth, and patience to rebuild what was shattered. Some days, I feel brave and hopeful. Other days, the old wounds ache. And that is okay. Healing is not a straight line. What I have learned is this: betrayal leaves deep scars, but scars do not mean the story is over. Forgiveness is meaningful only when both people are willing to change. Love is not blind anymore. It sees everything clearly, the pain, the mistakes, the lessons, and chooses carefully. My journey is not about returning to the past. It is about moving forward with strength. Even after heartbreak, life can be rebuilt. And I am learning, slowly but surely, that I still have a future worth walking toward. If you enjoyed my story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for learning English through stories with me. I hope you join me again in the next video.